Whoa! This is the Drake Passage, one of the world's most dangerous stretches of water.
There's a stretch of ocean where the Atlantic meets the Pacific in the most violent way imaginable.
This is the Atlantic Ocean, and this is the Pacific Ocean.
Ships still sink here regularly. Waves tower 8 stories high, and for centuries, sailors have called it the end of the world. This is Cape Horn and the Drake Passage, the most dangerous sea route on the planet. Even today, with all our technology, crossing these waters is a gamble with death itself. Where hell meets the ocean. At the southern tip of South America, the continent fractures into thousands of islands. The last piece of land before Antarctica is Cape Horn, a jagged rock cliff on Hornos Island in Chile. Just beyond it stretches the Drake Passage, a 600-mile gap of open ocean between South America and Antarctica. This is where 3 oceans collide. The Atlantic, Pacific, and Southern Ocean all converge in a geographical bottleneck.
It's the place where the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans meet at the northern end of the Drake Passage. This is the Atlantic Ocean, and this is the Pacific Ocean.
There's no landmass to slow the water down, no continental shelf to break the waves. The result is an uninterrupted belt of storms and currents that circles the entire globe at this latitude.
The one behind it, didn't it? Holy shit.
Sailors call these latitudes the Furious 50s and the Screaming 60s. The names aren't poetry, they're warnings. This region sits between 55 and 60 degrees south, where weather systems spin unchecked around Antarctica. It's the only place on Earth where wind and water can travel completely around the planet without hitting land. That simple geographical fact creates maritime hell. The physics of chaos. The Antarctic Circumpolar Current is the largest ocean current on Earth, moving 6 times more water than the Amazon River every second. It flows west to east, pushed by relentless westerly winds that never stop. When this massive current squeezes through the Drake Passage, it accelerates. Think of it like putting your thumb over a garden hose. The water has to go somewhere, so it speeds up and becomes more turbulent. But there's more happening beneath the surface. The ocean floor isn't flat. Underwater ridges and the continental shelf force deep water upward, creating vertical mixing that makes the surface incredibly chaotic. Cold Antarctic water meets warmer water from the north, creating sharp temperature gradients that fuel violent storms. The atmospheric pressure systems here are among the most intense on the planet. Low-pressure systems develop rapidly and deepen quickly, a process meteorologists call explosive cyclogenesis, or more dramatically, weather bombs. These storms can drop atmospheric pressure by 24 millibars in 24 hours, bringing hurricane-force winds that appear with little warning. And because there's no land to disrupt them, these storms maintain their strength far longer than they would elsewhere. The wind doesn't just blow, it screams across the water at sustained speeds of 50 to 60 knots, with gusts reaching over 100 knots. The waves that swallow ships. In most oceans, waves move in relatively predictable patterns. Not here. In the Drake Passage, waves come from multiple directions simultaneously, colliding and combining in chaotic patterns. Average wave heights regularly reach 20 to 30 feet, but that's just the average. During storms, waves consistently build to 50 or 60 feet, and occasionally much higher. But the real killers are rogue waves, also called freak waves. These are waves that appear suddenly, often twice the height of surrounding waves, with enough force to snap a cargo ship in half. They form when multiple wave patterns align perfectly, stacking their energy into one massive wall of water. In the Drake Passage, the conditions for rogue waves are nearly perfect. In 2001, A research vessel recorded a rogue wave here that reached 98 feet from trough to crest. That's nearly as tall as a 10-story building. The ship survived, but just barely. These waves don't just rise high, they're also incredibly steep, meaning they break with tremendous force rather than rolling smoothly. When a wave breaks onto a ship's deck, it can weigh hundreds of tons. Crushing equipment, smashing windows, and sweeping people overboard instantly. Cape Horn, the sailor's graveyard. Before the Panama Canal opened in 1914, every ship traveling between the Atlantic and Pacific had to round Cape Horn. It's estimated that over 800 ships and more than 10,000 sailors have been lost here. The exact numbers will never be known. Many ships simply disappeared without a trace. The Cape itself is a 1,400-foot tall cliff of bare rock that rises straight out of the ocean. When westerly gales blow, they accelerate around the headland, creating localized wind speeds that can exceed 120 miles per hour. Ships have to pass close to these cliffs because the alternative is heading further into open water where conditions are even worse. The currents around the Cape are treacherous. Water moving west to east meets the rocky coastline and creates eddies and countercurrents that can swing a ship sideways into the rocks. For sailing ships, this was often a death sentence. They couldn't motor away from danger or power through the wind. If the wind was against them, they had to tack back and forth, making minimal progress while being battered by waves and pushed toward the rocks. Some ships spent weeks trying to round the Cape only to be driven back each time. Others didn't get a second chance. The wrecks of dozens of ships still lie on the seafloor around Cape Horn, and occasionally storms will uncover wreckage on the shore, reminders of just how many didn't make it. The Drake Passage, 600 miles of fury. While Cape Horn is a specific point of danger, the Drake Passage is 600 miles of sustained nightmare. It's the shortest crossing to Antarctica, but short doesn't mean easy. The passage is only about 500 to 600 miles wide at its narrowest point, but it might as well be an ocean unto itself. There's nowhere to hide, no protected waters, no safe harbor. If a storm hits, you're in it for the duration. Modern cruise ships and research vessels still get absolutely hammered crossing the Drake. Videos from passengers show furniture sliding across rooms, dishes flying off tables, and people struggling to walk down hallways. And those are large, stable ships with advanced stabilization systems. Smaller vessels have it far worse. The Southern Ocean holds more energy than any other ocean on Earth. The wave periods, meaning the time between successive waves, are longer here than anywhere else. This creates swells that travel thousands of miles without losing energy. By the time they reach the Drake Passage, they're massive, organized, and incredibly powerful. And because the passage runs roughly north to south, ships often have to take these waves on the beam, meaning side-on, which is the most dangerous angle. A ship is most stable when heading directly into waves or running with them. Taking big waves from the side creates severe rolling that can lead to capsizing. The Williwaw wins. If the predictable dangers weren't enough, the region around Cape Horn and the Drake Passage is also home to Williwaws, sudden violent gusts of wind that drop from the mountains with almost no warning. These aren't normal winds. They're a type of katabatic wind, formed when cold, dense air on the high glaciers and mountains suddenly cascades down steep slopes toward the sea. Williwaws can go from calm to 100-mile-per-hour winds in seconds. They strike with focused intensity, often affecting just a small area, which makes them nearly impossible to predict. For ships close to shore, these winds are terrifying. One moment you're in moderate conditions, the next you're being knocked sideways by a blast strong enough to snap masts and tear sails to shreds. Even modern vessels with reinforced structures have suffered damage from Williwaws. The winds don't just push, they lift and twist, creating forces that equipment isn't designed to handle. Sailors describe the sound as a roar, like a freight train dropping out of the sky. By the time you hear it, it's already on you. Ice, icebergs, and zero visibility. The Drake Passage isn't just rough water, it's also cold, dangerously cold. Sea temperatures hover just above freezing, and icebergs are common, especially in the southern portions of the passage near Antarctica. These aren't just small chunks of ice. Some icebergs are the size of buildings, floating mostly submerged with only a fraction visible above water. In storms, with waves crashing over the bow and spray freezing on every surface, visibility drops to nearly zero. Radar can detect large icebergs, but smaller chunks of ice called growlers, about the size of a car, often don't show up. Hitting one at speed can rip open a hull. In heavy weather, ice accumulates on the ship itself. Spray freezes on the deck, railings, and superstructure, adding weight high on the vessel. This raises the center of gravity and makes the ship less stable, increasing the risk of capsizing. Crews have to go out in brutal conditions with hammers and axes to knock the ice off, a dangerous job when waves are sweeping the deck. Frostbite is a real concern, and falling overboard in these temperatures means death within minutes. The cold water saps body heat so fast that even strong swimmers lose muscle function almost immediately. Modern ships versus ancient terror. You'd think modern technology would have made the Drake Passage routine by now. It hasn't. Yes, steel hulls are stronger than wood, engines are more powerful than sails, and satellite weather forecasts give advance warning of storms. But the ocean here doesn't care. In 2010, a modern cruise ship named the Clelia II lost power in the Drake Passage during a storm. With no engines, the ship was at the mercy of 50-foot waves and 70-knot winds. Passengers and crew had to abandon ship into lifeboats in some of the worst conditions imaginable. They were rescued, but it was close. In 2022, a rogue wave smashed into the Viking Polaris, a brand new expedition cruise ship, shattering windows and killing one passenger. These aren't old, poorly maintained vessels. They're modern ships with experienced crews, and the Drake still nearly killed them. Commercial cargo ships avoid the passage when possible, routing around via the Panama Canal, or even taking the longer route around Africa rather than risk the Drake. Research vessels heading to Antarctica have no choice. They have to cross, and even with reinforced hulls and stabilizers, the journey is brutal. Scientists aboard research ships report being confined to their cabins for days while the ship pitches violently. Equipment breaks loose, people get injured, and seasickness is universal. It's a reminder that for all our advances, there are still places where nature remains firmly in control. The human cost.
Oh my God.
Surviving the Drake Passage or rounding Cape Horn isn't just about the ship. It's about the people on board. Exhaustion sets in quickly when you're constantly being thrown around, unable to sleep or eat properly. Crew members have to work in conditions that would shut down any land-based operation. Injuries are common, from broken bones to concussions, from being slammed into walls or equipment. And there's the psychological toll, being in a storm for days, surrounded by massive waves, knowing that one wrong move could sink the ship, that wears on people. Even experienced sailors admit to fear when crossing the Drake in bad weather. Survival rates for anyone going overboard are essentially zero. The cold water, massive waves, and speed at which ships are moving mean there's almost no chance of rescue. Historians estimate that during the age of sail, the mortality rate for sailors rounding Cape Horn could be as high as 10% on difficult passages. Today, it's far lower, but the danger hasn't disappeared. It's just less frequent because fewer people attempt it, and those who do are better prepared. But preparation only goes so far when the ocean decides to flex its power. Why anyone still sails through it. So why do people still cross the Drake Passage? For scientists, it's the only way to reach Antarctica without flying. Research stations need supplies, and data collection requires ships. The passage is unavoidable. For adventurers, it's precisely the danger that attracts them. Sailing around Cape Horn is considered one of the ultimate achievements in yachting. Solo sailors who complete it earn a level of respect reserved for only the most skilled and brave. Some do it just to say they survived. Then there are the tourists. Antarctic cruises have become increasingly popular, and every single one has to cross the Drake Passage. Cruise companies try to time crossings with weather windows, but even so, passengers regularly experience rough seas. For some, it's the adventure of a lifetime. For others, it's 2 days of absolute misery they'd rather forget. But the passage remains one of the few places on Earth where humans are consistently humbled. No matter how advanced we become, this stretch of ocean reminds us that nature still sets the rules. And those rules are unforgiving. The Drake Passage and Cape Horn remain as dangerous today as they were centuries ago. The ships are better, the technology more advanced, but the ocean hasn't changed. It's still violent, unpredictable, and deadly, and that's exactly why it commands such respect.